But Ernest, just tell me who you are, and I want to have a conversation. Tell the people who you are. What do you do? How long have you been here? Your children. You talked about Aaron and Jonathan. How old are they? What are they doing? What does your wife do? And I want to ask you a poignant question.
Good morning again. My name is Ernest Edwards. I'm a school psychologist in the Newark Public Schools. I've actually been in this church for 18 years. I was speaking with Elder Barlow yesterday, talking about my time in new members class when he talked about the fact that if prayers are like push-ups. The more you do them, the stronger you get. And that always stayed in my mind. And Elder Barlow and his wife were the two people who approached my wife and myself when we came to this church and asked us to, they told us that they would walk down with us. And the Barlows have been an integral part of our growth in this church since we've been here. And not only the Barlows, but the Rogers, the Benjamins, a whole lot of people. When you look at a church like this, you have pillars in the church, real pillars. And as a deacon, only 2 years in my growth here as a deacon, I want to be that kind of example. I want to be the kind of person that people might think, I'd like to emulate him or her. So my growth here has been fantastic. Not only my growth, but my wife's as well. I have this beautiful wife. She's her name is Dr. Jaquetta Edwards. She's an optometrist. She's back there. We've been married 25 years, September just passed. We have two kids, Jonathan, who's 24 years old, and Aaron, who is actually 19 years old. Aaron's a sophomore at Temple University, whom we're really pleased with her growth and her development as a young woman, and a young woman of God is that. And we have a 24-year-old son, Jonathan, who works in Philadelphia, lives in Philadelphia. He moved out on us. I know how you feel, Bishop, because he just up and moved on us, saying, "I'm moving," right after he graduated college, and we are now empty nesters. But we're learning how to adjust and live as empty nesters. We thank God for a great church, for great support, and for just the people of God in this church, because this is a rich place to grow your kids. Bishop, I thank you for this environment. I thank you and your staff for this environment, because what you've laid here is a foundation. If people get involved and put their kids in the programs that we have, there's no telling where our kids can go. So I thank you.
Thank you, Ernest. I wanted to, when you spoke about your son, and you spoke about Deacon Benjamin's sons, and all of these young men are either graduates, or actually Deacon Benjamin's oldest son is a graduate of college. He now works in Capitol Hill with Congress and Senate. And he tweeted me, and I tweeted him back. And I said, I can't believe that the little boy that I held as a baby is now working on Capitol Hill. And he tweeted me back and said, I am what I am because of my church and my pastor and my parents. And that blessed me tremendously. You and he and most people in here have been tremendous parents, and we give God praise for you. I have you here today specifically because our Khalfani luncheon, what day is that again?
March 3rd.
That's the week after Family and Friends Day.
Yes.
Okay. And the Khalfani ministry, I want you just to give us in a snippet, what does the Khalfani ministry do now? Khalfani is our big brother ministry. I'll give you just a brief history. You tell us what you're doing now. We started this ministry after the passing of a young man named Darrell Mays, who left a wife and two children, a boy and a girl. The young lady now, is in medical school, and the young man is a graduate of Hampton, and he is the gentleman who makes these bow ties. He has his own business. And we started that Big Brother ministry as an answer to be an example to fatherless young men. And then we had a wonderful member named Joanne Lundy, whose husband died in 1986, and then she died in 1991, and leaving 4 sons who were raised by their grandparents and by this church. And one of them went on to play for the Houston Texans. All of them went to college. And that was the power of this Big Brother ministry. And as I looked at that young man there and then compared him with a young man that I saw this week who was walking down the street, it was interesting because he had to hold his pants up so he wouldn't break his neck, because his pants were, the belt buckle was beneath his, I don't know how to say it tastefully, his buttocks, the belt buckle, the buttocks, and but he had to hold his pants up so he wouldn't trip. And I said to myself, it's now here's what's interesting. He wasn't black. He wasn't black. It was a white young man, and then around the corner there was a Latino young man, same thing, and then when I came into town, it was a black young man. And I said to myself, I wonder if there's a father anywhere in the home, or an uncle, or a grandfather, or an example. And so that ministry was started, and what we did then is we applied a man to a young man to a boy. And the young man in our church, most of them were fathers, young fathers, they would hook up with the young men and they would take them along with their family to different groups. In fact, the ministry was so good, we had men who had sons like you yourself, or in your son's life, but the ministry is so important. So that's the history of the ministry. Give me 1 or 2 things that we're doing now very quickly, and I want to say a word about alcohol and drugs and this funeral yesterday.
Before I answer your question, Bishop, I'd like to ask you, what was your experience like yesterday at that rich funeral that we were able to see on TV?
Okay. Well, before I say that, I'd like you to answer my question, because I may go... And I can't say anything if I don't get something to drink here. Bring up my arm. It's a little... Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Just to answer our bishop's question.
I'm going to say I may go a little longer. That's why I want you to say that.
Just to answer his question. One of the things I think we are able to do as a ministry today in Khalfani is we're able to synchronize the relationship of home that the parent has to the issues that the student himself comes with. The parent has the issue of trying to raise a boy, but our job is to help build him spiritually. And by building him spiritually, what we get a chance to do is to look at what he's going through. My mother don't understand, she doesn't know, and we're going to say, okay, fine, your mother don't know, but we're going to help you learn to be able to listen to what your mother is saying and acknowledge that she is the authority in the house, and your job is to just follow through. And when you have a problem, we can talk with your mother. We do a thing in Khalfani. We have a parents group where we actually talk with the parent to find out what's going on at home and school. And when we go back, we send that information back to the group, so the people who are working with the boys will know, well, he's not doing his homework, he's not cleaning up his room, he's not going to bed when mom asks him to. So we need you to work on that and talk about those kinds of things. So we build a relationship that's God-centered, that goes back to the home, that's parent-centered, and mother knows that we're supporting what she's talking about at home.
Thank you. This past week, we buried Bishop Seawright's beloved mother. Our prayers are with him, as well as Catherine Elias, who buried her mother this week, Teddy's, Elias' wife. And one of the bishops got up and gave remarks and greetings, and he talked about the power of a mother. Nothing like mothers. So all mothers, God bless you. You only get one, and what we need our daddies. But I don't know why we don't fall out when our daddies die. We cry. We cry, but mama goes, we just fall out. But this bishop got up, Bishop Rochford, and Bishop Rochford said, nowadays that people have timeout. He said, my mother didn't believe in timeout. He said, my mother believed in knockout. And I thought that was so, I thought, now, I you know, there's too many social workers and policemen and everything that are here, so I'm not advocating corporal punishment at all, because some people go overboard and they I don't ever believe in beating children, ever. But I think tapping the hand and tapping those legs, I think that's important. And the reason why it's challenging, because sometimes if you go into anger, you can end up hurting your child. But I think it is important discipline, and at a certain point, a boy will challenge the authority of his mother. And that's why he needs a man. One young man was in trouble in our church, and the principal said, you keep on acting up, you're already in detention, I'm gonna call your mother. And he said, call my mother. He was 14. You call my mother. I don't care what you call my mother. He said, I'm gonna call your father. I ain't got no father, okay? He was mad. He said, I'm gonna call your mother. Call my mother, call my grandmother, call my aunt. I don't care who you call who. Then he said, all right, don't you go to Second Baptist Church? And the young man said, yeah, well, what about it? He said, I know your pastor. It wasn't a bishop. I know you know what, I'm gonna call Pastor Hilliard. No, Lord, please don't call pastor. Don't call the pastor. Well, I'm gonna obey. I'm gonna do whatever, because I used to warn the children and scare them. If you got in trouble in school and the church and the school called me, I was gonna come into the school with my preaching robe on down the hallway and holding my Bible, and you'd be so embarrassed I wouldn't have to say a thing. I'd just come into church with my robe on. And so whatever it takes, raise these children to become what they ought to be. I'll end my statements here. The experience at Whitney Houston's funeral was, it was very sad to me. I know that it was on television. It looked like a concert, and it was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful music tribute. But it was very, very sad to me, because most of us watched her rise to fame, and it was very sad. You know, everybody was there. The A-list was there. Everybody was. Al Sharpton was next to me. Michael Eric Dyson was in front of me. Jesse Jackson was to my left, and it was invitation only. And they had the streets blocked off 9 blocks away from the church in every direction. And the only way you got in was with a ticket that you had to show at every stop. And so I want to thank the Lord for favor, and thank God for a ticket and then being invited. And so that was a great blessing to be there. When I got there, because of course I know the pastor, I used to preach at New Hope when I was a much younger man under Reverend Thomas. And so I know the pastor, I know several members there, and they gave me a very wonderful seat. And because I have good sense, I went in and got my seat before the church, before they let other folk in. So I came in and the band was rehearsing, and I came in, and I happened to come in before the coffin got in there. And so as the coffin was coming in, I was there. And because I know the undertaker, it was a great honor to help her, and because I do this as a living with just flowers and what have you. I thought it was a very interesting time. Of course, what you couldn't see is the Sissy Houston, whom I know very well. Looking at that mother on that corner was very, very challenging. Watching Oprah and Gail and Tyler Perry and everybody, just watching people, it was very, very moving. And I'll tell you what was very moving, and here is where I want to zero in today. I talked about young people and what have you. It was very moving because everybody wants fame, but there's a price to be paid for fame. And I think the key is, and I mean on every level, because even in the ministry, nowadays you get more than 20 members, and the pastors feel that we're famous, and you can never believe that you are the role that you play. You have to know that I am Donald Hilliard, which is I am a Christian man that happens to be called to pastor a wonderful congregation. And I happen to get good press by many people. Not everybody gives me good press. But you can't believe your press. whether it's good or bad. You have to know who God made. And I think that in the case of Whitney Houston, it was very sad to just watch the demise of this woman emotionally on so many levels. And I hope she's remembered, because I think she was indeed the greatest singer of our time. And she was the greatest singer of our time, a wonderful entertainer. And so it was an interesting experience. And most people saw the scene of me greeting Sissy Houston as I was leaving. And when I went to her, I mean, here she was, all this grief. I don't know if she was medicated or not. When I went to greet her, I said, Sissy, I'm Don. I know who you are. You my family. You know, you my cousin. You Dion's cousin. And so in all that grief, she immediately knew who I was, and we had a moment. And I let her know the Cathedral family, we were all praying for her strength. I want to warn our children, that's the final thing, against the dangers of even getting started. I want to warn parents to, if your children, and this is the reality, the ideal is don't drink at all. The reality is that some of our kids, they're going to experiment, and the reality is also that some of y'all drink also. But when you have issues in your bloodline, you really need to be very, very careful. You need to know what your limits are. There's a difference between a glass of wine and a screwdriver, and a gin and tonic. And, you know, and we need to be very careful in our homes, in your homes, your homes. You just don't offer liquor, because you don't know who is where. They may be sober until they get to your house. And especially as a person that represents the church, your home should be what we call in social work a safe place. And for someone who's struggling with alcohol, even cigarettes, those kinds of things can be the entrance. Liquor, believe it or not, I know we don't like to talk about, that can be the entrance drug to hard drugs. And then nowadays, it's prescription drugs that we have to watch. These medications are wonderful on their own. You know, there are people that need anti-anxiety medication. They need this, they need that. But mixing that and, throwing back a little Hennessy, you may not even know, that what the reaction is going to be. And I just wanted to warn our people there. That's what was going through my mind, hoping that we would learn from this experience, whatever took her out. I do believe she is with the Lord, because, she, like everyone else, has something that she had to fight. I do believe that she was with the Lord. She is with the Lord, and that was my prayer yesterday. So sitting there was a very moving for me, very moving experience to be at that service, and then to think about how many people want to be famous and get caught up in the role and caught up in what everybody else says about them. You are more than what people say about you. You are who God says you are. So God bless Whitney Houston, and God bless her family, and young people and older people. Let's not, get to be 25 like our children, and pray God that, they got through the turbulent teens. Let's pray God in the name of Jesus that all of our children don't decide after they get out of college and we get them through, you can never really hold your breath when you have kids, because you just don't ever know, no matter what, you can never just like, whew, finally we got them through that, because there's always some temptation somewhere. So I just want to remind all of us, you still have moral authority. And the last thing I do need to say, and this is it for my announcements, I just happen to be sitting today. As you know, that I prayed today for this week at the, what did I pray for, Pastor? The assembly, the General Assembly of the state of New Jersey. I was invited by our assemblyman to offer prayer, Senator John Wisniewski. And I wasn't going to do it. In fact, I had declined the invitation because I didn't want to, when I saw it was on the agenda, I didn't want to get all, and they want mics all in my face and all. I just didn't want to, it's not like I've not done this before. I've been pastor for 29 years. But Pastor Glover and Carol Deutschwright thought I should do it, and I did. And I prayed, and in the prayer, I asked the Lord to help us not to leave our morals at the door, and that in the prayer I said, help us to know that we will have to give an answer in this life and in the life to come for the decision that we make today. And I say that, and I did pray in the name of him who died and rose from the dead to die again no more, even Jesus, the very Christ of God. And I prayed that prayer without shame. I just prayed that prayer without shame, and I understand that there were people that were offended. I'll probably get some emails this week. I need to say this as your pastor. It is in our bylaws that we do not affirm marriage as an institution between same sexes. We affirm the institution of marriage between a husband and a wife. And I want to make that very clear that that's the position of our church. That's the position of our church. When this whole thing started, we changed the bylaws to make sure it's in the bylaws. But it's now the law of the land. And this is where things get sticky, because you're going to begin to see that in the church. And I want us to be a tolerant church that preaches the truth, but you can preach the truth and still love everybody. I want to make that clear. You can preach the truth and have a standard and still love everybody. So we're praying for the state of New Jersey. I'm glad the governor vetoed it. It probably will become law, however, but I'm glad he's going to veto it. I don't agree with him on many, many things. But I don't agree with Obama on many, many things. But we must pray for all of those that have rule over us, that God would give grace. We're in a very challenging day. Our children are going to grow up confused, and they're not going to know what, and this opens up the door. We are moving closely to a very challenging moment in our time. Now is not the time to forsake God in your life, and now is not the time not to raise your children in the fear and the admonition of the Lord. Thank you so much, Ernest. God bless all of you in Jesus' name.